Psalm 127, verses 1 and 2. Unless Yahweh builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Unless Yahweh guards the city, the watchman keeps awake in vain. It is vain for you to rise up early and to retire late, to eat the bread of painful labors, for he gives to his beloved even in his sleep. You can tell this was written by Solomon because it sounds a lot like Ecclesiastes, right? This is all pointless if it's just contained under the sun. We need something from the other side of the sun to break into this existence we have on earth underneath the sun and infuse it all with meaning, because everything here is going to burn. It's all going to burn. And so you can make it nice and you can make it comfortable, and your nice, comfortable stuff is going to burn. Or you could cause a complete disaster, and that disaster, it's going to burn. So it's all meaningless unless God is involved in things, giving it eternal meaning. And whatever meaning it does have is totally temporary because it's gonna what? All right, so we see Solomon's take on life. I think he probably wrote this in his old age when he had learned a lot of this stuff because he had tried everything else. You know, you build a big palace, all right, the kings of the earth are impressed. And then his conclusion is, so what? After you get the oohs and the ahs and the ribbon cutting and the back slaps and the banquets, you're kind of left with an empty palace. Like, who cares? I was just listening to an interview with Shaquille O'Neal, great basketball player from my childhood, and he was giving some advice to younger ball players, and he said, man, take care of your family just as much as you take care of your money, because he basically said, I've got money now, and I got a divorce, and I go home to a 100,000 square foot empty house alone. It's pointless, right? He who builds the house builds it in vain. And actually that goes into the second half of Psalm 127, which we'll look at next week, but it just says children are a blessing, man. That's where you invest. But it's really interesting the way that Solomon gets at his point here, because he says you could rise up early, you could go to bed late, and it's pointless unless you're doing it for the Lord. Well, this is interesting because labor is a good thing. Hard work is a good thing. Work ethic is a good thing, right? You should be teaching your daughters, don't marry a lazy guy. It's not going to go well for you. If a guy can't work, a guy can't function as a man is supposed to function in the world. You should tell your sons, don't marry a lazy woman. It's not going to go well for you. You'll wind up sleeping in a sleeping bag on the corner of your roof and being happy about it just so you don't have to be in the house with her. So hard work, long days, good honest sweat, that's good stuff in the Bible. So why does he say here it's vain for you to rise up early and to retire late and to eat the bread of painful labors? Well, because that's in the context of verse 1. Unless the Lord's the one doing it, unless he's actually working through you, unless you're working towards his purposes, then it is going to burn. It is going to wind up being pointless. And you're going to have a whole life full of labor and then end up looking back on it and saying, yeah, I did a lot. I got a lot done, but what did I really accomplish? One of the things that pastors do is we sit with a lot of people at or near the end of their life. And so we hear a lot of people's regrets, and we hear a lot of people's triumphs and the things that they're happy about and proud of and want to pass along. And I can't tell you how many times I've sat with old men and they said, I thought my only job was to provide. And so I worked and I worked and I worked and I provided everything that my family needed. And I missed every baseball game, and I missed every significant turning point at the dinner table in those conversations. I missed it when my daughters were crying and needed help kind of framing their world and their relationships. I missed it when my sons were learning how to control their anger and their temper and things like that, because I was working. Now look, we have to do that, right? Labor is the curse, the toil and the hardness of work. That's the curse that we're operating under, and it is pleasing to God when we function well in that environment of hard work. What Solomon is saying here is not don't do the work. He's saying do it for the purpose that God gave it to you. Otherwise, it's going to be pointless. Okay? You take a look at Psalm 19, for example. The very end of Psalm 19. It seems almost cliche because you've probably heard this many times, but what if we could take this as an overarching banner, as a prayer for our entire life? Look at the last verse of Psalm 19. It says, verse 14, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Yahweh, my rock and my redeemer. You're going to be having thoughts all day. You're going to be thinking about stuff you're doing at work. You're going to be thinking about family stuff. You're going to be thinking about politics. You're going to be thinking about whatever. What if we could have all of those thoughts be pleasing to the Lord? You're going to be meditating about stuff all day. How to solve an engineering problem at your job. You're going to be meditating, what's that noise in my car, and thinking about it and running all the scenarios about what if I need another car and things like that. You're going to be chewing on stuff and meditating on things. And the scriptures, hopefully you're seeing this in the morning and you're going to be meditating on the scriptures throughout the day, right? What if all of these thoughts and meditations and all that time we spend on it could be pleasing to the Lord? Then we would be accomplishing things here on earth. We would be building the house, but it would be the Lord building the house, not just us swinging a hammer for the sake of swinging a hammer because something's got to get checked off of the list. Maybe this moment isn't here because something needs to get done. Maybe this moment is here as a gift from God, right? So that takes us to 1 Corinthians 10, verse 31. Another famous verse, and rightfully so. Whether then you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. I got a missionary buddy who taught me a really great practice, and I don't remember it as often as I like to, but he would sneak in the glory of God to all kinds of prayer, right? So I was on the field with him, and we were eating some food, and he was praying for the meal. Hey, God, thank you for today. Thank you for the students we're teaching. Thank you for all of this. We eat for your glory. Amen. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then we would pray before we went to bed. We'd say, God, thank you for today. Please preserve us through the night so we can work for you more tomorrow. We sleep for your glory. And I was like, we sleep for your glory. I've never consciously had that thought in my life, but it's true. I mean, back to Psalm 127, in verse 2, it says, he gives to his beloved even in his sleep, right? So when you go to sleep, God's preaching a sermon. He's saying, I'm still working when you're not. You need rest. You need rejuvenation. You are weak. God is strong, right? And he proves that while we're sleeping. I was talking to one of our church members the other day, and he brought up a really coul thought. He's going through some stuff in life, and he said, I need to reframe how I'm seeing these problems because God has entrusted these problems to me. It's kind of that Acts 5:41 thing. Like, we have been counted worthy to suffer for the name of Christ, right? And he said, I'm getting a lot of negative phone calls right now based on the stuff that he's going through in life. But he said, who's to say that next phone call isn't an answer to prayer? And I just thought, now that's maturity. That's how you do problems in life. That's how you do work. That's how you do labor. Not everything's going to go the way we want it to. It shouldn't, right? We're not God, right? We don't have the power to make everything go the way we want it to. And if we did, I've seen Bruce Almighty. I'm not interested in juggling those balls either. So he said, though things are not the way that I want them, why do I think that means it's not an answer to prayer? And so every call he takes, even if he thinks it's going to be a gut wrencher, every situation he has to engage, even if he thinks this is going to go really poorly, he just has that question in the back of his mind. What if this is the Lord building the house, right? And what if this is just the toil and the sweat and the pain and the tears and the blood and whatever that it takes to build a house? Sometimes your thumb gets hit, and that's not always a bad thing, So, Psalm 127 basically says, go about your life, work hard, do your job, and do it well, and do it heartily, and pour all of yourself into it. And ask the Lord to be with you, working through you. Because it is Him who works in you to will and to work for His good pleasure. So at the end of the day, we'd like to have a whole lot of labor that we can hand to the Lord and say, God, would you do something with this? I've done everything I can by your grace. Hopefully it's acceptable to you. Now, would you do something with that I can't get done? I'm going to go to sleep. I sleep for your glory.